Test, test, test.
Test, test, test.
Wow.
Audio.
Audio.
That's
I
what we
love
do.
your accent.
Thank you.
We're finally here, people. All right.
Ooh, Ferrari. You a Formula One
I am.
person?
You like Formula One?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah.
I have a whole fantasy team that I do with touring people.
You do?
Yeah.
I tried that once. I can't get into that. I can't get into the fantasy. I've never been a fantasy player.
I didn't know you're a Formula One person.
Yeah.
Who's your team?
I mean, I got to support the British boys. Lando, Lewis.
There's a
George.
frustration I have right now with them.
Yeah.
They are. I'm a not a Red Bull fan. I'm a Max fan.
Okay.
And
Oh, you're the Max fan.
oh, I am the Max fan. And they are wiping the floor right now. I'm here with Jim Ebdon, this guy, who happens to run sound for.
Linkin Park. Although I don't run sound, I mix sound.
Oh, I'm gonna have to change every title in every my videos now. Mixing sound for.
Mixing sound. There you go. I'm like, yeah. No, I like it. It's cute.
We're
Running
finally
sound.
here.
I'm running sound.
You guys have asked for it. A lot of y'all have asked for it, and we made it happen, Jim.
Good.
We've been trying to do this for a while.
I need to interview you though. You're the superstar here.
No.
Yeah, man.
Everyone's going to find out that all I can do is ask questions. There's nothing more in my mind than just questions to ask.
Okay. All right. Shoot. Question one.
Do you fold or crumple your toilet paper?
I'm a folder. I like a big padded. I'm a bit greedy with my toilet paper actually. And I wasn't the one in the pandemic that went out and bought pallets of toilet
paper. Oh, be honest,
paper.
you were.
No, I didn't.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
I have a Japanese toilet at home, so I don't need paper.
Do you not use toilet paper?
Yeah, of course I do.
Okay.
Yeah. Unless I'm on a Japanese toilet.
Okay. Let's rewind.
Okay.
All the way back to the beginning. Long time ago. Where are you from?
What do you mean a long time ago?
Not very long ago.
I was born in Cobham in Surrey, which is just outside London, in England. Went to school, as you do.
Okay.
Hated school. My brother had a drum kit. My older brother had a drum kit, and when he was still at school, I would play his drums, and that was my outlet, playing drums. And I actually turned out to be better than him. And I was probably 8, 9 years old. And
have you told this to his face, or is he going to?
Yeah. No, he would have killed me at the time if I, touched his drums while he was at school. And then the parents bought me a drum kit when I was about 11, 12, and that really shaped where I am today, sitting here talking to you, because the drumming for me, it was like that was the thing I was really good at. I liked playing sports. I was a very sporty kid. I was on all the teams at school, but I wasn't into academics, all that boring stuff. So I played the drums, and that got me through, a difficult childhood. And ultimately, I got a job in a recording studio when I left school at 17. Well, I was asked to leave school at 17.
So you come from the dark side.
I wasn't a great student. I was playing in bands then when I was 17, but got a job in a recording studio. So I was the runner and the gopher in the studio.
So many questions for you. Question number one. Do you think that starting off on drums does that affect your mixing today? Do you find yourself being more drum focused?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate a drum sound, and I think most bands I've mixed, the core is the drums, and I've said this my whole career. I think once you get a good drum sound, everything else will just fit into place, and that's really the core of mixing for me. It might not be true 100% of the time, but mainly it's been a good steadfast rule of thumb for me.
Okay, so you went to the studio. You started off at the dark side first.
Yeah.
How long were you doing the studio stuff for?
From the age of 17 till about 22, 23. And I was forced to I worked in a studio that was famous for recording the police. And I worked for their record producer. I was his assistant.
And Police, is that one of those up and coming bands?
A little band from, sort of scattered around England, and even the drummer was from America.
Good name. They might go somewhere.
They weren't bad. They were a pretty good pub band.
Okay.
And so the guy I worked for, he recorded and produced those, and I came along a little later, so I wasn't there for those sessions. But you know, I did some remixes for them at that time and did some B-sides. I was involved. I didn't remix it. I was involved in the B-sides and stuff. In those days when you had B-sides, I sound like I'm ancient. I'm not ancient. So I have this studio background, which is great. You know, I learned to cut tape, mic placement, how to use compressors, gates.
So you can actually cut the 2-inch and...
Oh yeah, sliced 2-inch. Yeah. I got really good at that, and then 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch, and you know. But I think it was just watching producers come through, because there was no training in those days. There was no school you could go to learn how to be a sound engineer. You just had to watch and learn, and then when the studio closed in the evening, when the session was finished, I'd stay behind and just pull any tapes I wanted and just practice mixing and just practice.
You know, it's my dad owned a recording studio back then. There's been so many different changes, not back then, but back when I was younger, and there's been so many different changes that has happened with the studio. And someone was telling me that, and this, maybe you can kind of speak into this a little bit, but recording studios had their sound. And typically it was based upon the engineer, because there's been an engineer that was there for so long that created that sound, and you sat underneath the engineer for such a long time until that person finally gave up their seat. But nowadays it's kind of shifted to, there's not one engineer or producer at a studio anymore. It's kind of just shifting around in laptops, and it's not...
Yeah, it's a whole different business.
Yeah.
It's a whole different business. And I sort of stopped working in the studios only I always thought I was going to be a world famous record producer by the time I was 30, but that never happened. But I stumbled into live sound by accident. I was recording an album with an English rock band called Wishbone Ash, who were ancient, and they said to me they had a festival in Germany the following weekend. You know, did I want to come and mix the sound? I'm like, sure. How difficult can that be? So after I'd spent 20 minutes of sound check on the bass drum, or kick drum, or however people like to call it, I was tapped on the shoulder. Okay, sound check's over. And I'm like, what do you mean? I just got the bass drum sound. So I had to learn pretty quick how to get a sound together if I was going to continue to do that, you know. Because in the studio we had the luxury of a day on a kick drum sound.
One of the things I'm kind of hoping to do more with this channel is that I've really been inspired with studios is that the mentorship and one-on-one with somebody in that studio. You got the runners, you got the, you know, the ones and the twos behind there to be able to really sit in the room and learn from it, which is harder in this environment. I'm trying to really break down the walls with that to be able to help train with that. But I think that COVID did that a little bit to where a lot of the old timers kind of hung up their hats, and then there's been room for new people in. And I think with the rise of social media and these kind of videos, there's been a little bit more. But I really want to, and I'm really inspired by studios on that side of that, really mentoring and internships, which you don't see too much here too often unless you're a local labor person. So you were in the studio for how long, you said?
It was about 6 years.
6 years. What did you end up being at the end of that? You an engineer
I was the house engineer, yeah.
Okay.
So I'd worked my way up. And
what's your biggest takeaway from that period?
Wow, I mean, you know, I wish I'd done a lot of things differently.
Okay.
In hindsight.
Like technically or just practically or just...
Yeah, both, you know, and tried to be in the right place at the right time. I was not that motivated to try and, you know, get my own work. I was always relying on the studio to find me the job, you know. And then, of course, when I had to go freelance, the studio shut down, so I had to go freelance. But I started, you know, as I said, I started going on the road by default, really. So that wasn't my plan ever.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, that was the best route for me.
Is there any principles that you still use that you learned from that studio time?
Yeah. I mean, you sort of, I mean, dare I say it, there are some great colleges and some great courses now which should teach you and teach students way better than I know any of this stuff, technically how this stuff works. I mean, Ricky, my assistant, I'm fucked without him, because he really knows how all this stuff works and is put together. And they can teach you that at school. I wasn't ever really taught that. I was taught how to listen to things, which is a massive difference. You can operate, anyone can operate, you can teach a monkey to operate, but you can't teach a monkey to actually listen. So I believe, I don't know what the ratios of people coming out of these colleges now, where they get jobs, where they're positioned, I have no idea. I can only assume that people like Clare Brothers pick up some of the top mixers, but then again, they have to start at the bottom working in the shop, coiling cables, and no one's going to be a mixer immediately, which is a shame, and I'm not sure they're told that when they go pay their 60 grand or whatever.
I was talking to Scoville, and he was mentioning the same thing, that when he teaches, like, he'll do the same thing with every student. Starts with the the gain, and then the EQ, and then the panning, and work all the way down, and they put the fader up, and once it's up, they always give you that look of like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
And then now what is actually the most important part. Anybody can do all of that, but then what is it doing?
You can get all the channels with audio coming through them, but then how do you see, I remember when I started and I got to that point, wow, I can hear everything. Everything's coming through, but there was no mix. I didn't know how to mix. And it was, and so I mixed a 2-track, and to the record producer, when he came in the next day, I said, check this out. I did this last night. And he looked at me and he stopped the tape and he goes, fucking bass is panned to the left. What the fuck? And I had no idea. I'm like, okay, yeah. Isn't it not supposed to be panned to the left?
Yeah.
I was like 17 years old or whatever. And it sounded good. I was more pleased that I'd actually got everything to work and it was all working. And obviously from that point, it's like, oh yeah, it's panned to the, oh, I better start listening to stuff because that's clearly not right,
So what's your advice to people, especially the younger engineers that feel like they understand the basics, but they want to be able to get a good mix?
I don't know. I mean, there's some great tutorial videos from people like yourself, and Pooch does great videos,
Well, stuff, because it sounds so subjective,
yeah,
too.
It's totally subjective.
Objectively.
Yeah.
Subjective.
Yes. And it really is experimental, and it's, I've had a good career at doing this. Don't get me wrong. It's been amazing, and I'm super lucky. I've even got to this point, and I get to mix good artists. But I don't think I'm a good mixer. I do something that everybody likes, and I don't know what it is. I just do music that feels good to me, and how it sounds to me. And if everybody else likes it, amazing. And if somebody over here doesn't like it, I'm sorry. I'm just. You can't please everybody in this business.
I was talking with Pooch, and he was telling me, it's like, I don't have great ears. I actually have average ears, but I think that kind of makes me a good mixer because I have average ears.
Right.
And I was like, interesting, man.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay,
yeah.
so
I have a dominant ear as well. It's weird.
Do you?
Yeah.
Apparently the bass goes on the left, right?
Yeah, the bass goes to the left. That's why I always position myself house right. So then it appears more in the middle.
One of the things I do appreciate about studios is the attention to microphone placement, source tone is the utmost priority. And spending the time to be able to get that right. And one of the things I've noticed from the goods and the greats is the greats are really focused on that source tone and the microphone. From there, the rest of it will get figured out. So I have a huge appreciation from that. My question, I guess, I don't want to do the, is analog better than digital question, but, it's come a long ways. I'm sure this is a lot different from the console that you were using in the studio.
Yeah.
Is your mindset still the same approaching something like this as to approaching an analog mixer? Do you still kind of think the same way through that, or does this kind of help you maybe get out of the box a little bit?
It's interesting. I mean, I sort of operate this like an analog mixer, but today's concert touring, people need a feed here, they need a feed there, which is what these consoles are great at. They're a giant phone exchange. You can send a signal anywhere to anywhere, bring it in from anywhere. I mean, they're so brilliantly designed in that respect, but ultimately, the signal coming into the console and going out is the same as an analog a situation. They might not sound the same, but you know,
Sure.
that's a whole subjective conversation right there. What sounds better, analog or digital? Well, listen to everything and then tell me if that's analog or digital. Go and sit over there for the evening and tell me if that's analog or digital. You know, so it's very
Exactly.
subjective. But you know, analog is I think more forgiving. It's just a warmer. It's warmer. I wouldn't say it's better. I wouldn't say it's
Yeah.
you know it's just analog. It's just analog. You know, and of course we try and emulate that analog sound again. But I don't think it's an analog sound. It's just for me. I'm just sculpting a sound for the audience. I'm not trying to make it sound analog
Yeah.
deliberately. You know, it's just this is how it sounds. And if it does sound analog, well, that's what we like to listen to. You know.
One of the things I really like to advise people is with digital consoles, try out different ones because not everyone's going to react the same way in
Yeah.
terms of compression and in
Yeah.
terms of ratios. You could do the same exact movement, but it's going to sound different from each one.
Yeah.
But it's quite the cockpit you got.
It's a lovely console to operate. That's for sure. It's very bright and. Um, you know, I think it sounds okay. I don't know if it sounds great or
Yeah.
good or but I know it sounds different to a different manufacturer. Whether that's good or bad, I mean, it's all subjective. I like to operate this, you know.
Yeah.
I was working with another manufacturer for 5, 6 years until last year when this console came out, and I was totally happy with the sound of that. Totally happy. But this came out, and actually, I was working with Sam Smith last year, and then I started Linkin Park, so I had to go backwards and forwards. So I put one of these on the Sam Smith tour, just so I can get someone to cover, because this brand of console seems to be easier to operate for most people, just to come in and take over a show, you know. So, you know, Ricky was doing a lot of mixing for me in rehearsals on this. You know, had it been the other brand of console, he may have been scratching his head a bit more and taken more time for the band to want a recording or something,
Sure.
you know. Just simple things like that. So, um, you know, I'll try anything once and you know, I'm very much a mixer, though I use my ears instead of my eyes. It's
Okay.
very easy to get lost by looking at all
Oh,
these
with all the
fabulous
screens.
plugins and the
Oh my
screens.
gosh. Or even RTAs. Smart is an
Yeah,
amazing tool,
yeah.
but
But I
I,
keep that over there. Bill has that. All I want to see are these 4 numbers down here, which are my SPL.
all right. What band did you say you went on tour with again? That first band?
Sam Smith.
No, the first.
Oh, Wishbone Ash.
Okay.
They were just like a weird, you know, 70s rock band from England. They had a few hits, I believe.
Okay.
I kind of started with them towards the end of their career. I think I recorded one of their last records. Um, but I had a lot of fun. They taught me a lot of stuff. You know, we'd tour around Europe and America in a van. I'd drive the van, and I'm sort of the tour manager as well, which I didn't know what that meant, but they'd be like, "Go check us into the hotel." Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
literally, I did anything, you know, and it was such fun. We had such a great time. And then, you know, going to the different clubs, and we didn't carry any equipment. We carried a drum kit and some guitar amps, I think, and some guitars
Console du
in
jour,
the
PA
back
du
in the
jour.
back of the van, you know, and
Wow.
that's how I started touring. And it's really interesting though, you know, when you do console du jour, and of course they're only ever this big, you know, and we had maybe one compressor and 2 gates or something. And in those days, you really had to know how a compressor worked. And you know, if I was teaching students today, I'd get rid of all this, give them a couple of channels and a compressor, or not a couple of channels, 24 inputs, one compressor. Choose which channel you're going to compress. What's the most important thing to compress? Listen to what's going on, then choose what you need to compress or gate. And it's a good learning curve for actually how to use a compressor the best way. Because
That's
now I've got like
fascinating.
I can have 20 on each fucking input here. It's ridiculous, crazy. But unless you know what they're actually doing and how they work with each other, it's pointless having them because you end up in all sorts of trouble.
There's somebody else that's talking. I don't remember who it was, but it's talking about one of the downfalls right now is there's so many things and then everything's so shiny right now, especially with plugins. And I think it was Burton I was talking with, and that we are just it's a service job, and we're kind of in a way like contractors hired to do a kitchen. We're no different than that. That we're, even if they don't have an idea for the kitchen, we're still, going to give something to them, and they'll have their feedback
Yeah.
back. And don't be offended. We're still asked to do that. But are you? And that was something I had a hard time with. Is like, it's my mix and my sound. You making your input is, I'm getting frustrated with that. No, that's not. Take a step back from that. You're just in service. But the thing is, I think so many people are so infatuated with getting all the tools, all the fancy stuff, all the plugins. But are you so good with that saw that you can cut a perfect 45-degree angle every single time with no fray, no nothing? And when I heard that from Bert, and I was just like, it's actually perfect, because especially nowadays, it's like walking to Bass Pro. You want to go fishing, but how many lures and like
it's ridiculous.
reels and everything? It's like, I just want to go.
It's overwhelming.
Fishing,
It's totally,
man. Okay, take me to the next band you're with.
Oh, from then?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I can't remember who I worked with in those days, but it was a lot of maybe some new acts with record companies, and then Lars Brogard. Do you know who Lars is?
Mm-mm.
Lars mixed Rod Stewart for years, up until about 5 or 6 years ago, and he was Rod's production manager forever. And there was a company in California called Electrotech, and he started Electrotech London.
Okay.
And long story short, a friend introduced me to him, and this was just as I was going freelance, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here, And he said, well, yeah, come into our warehouse and just see what goes on, and there's big speakers, and I'm like, oh, this is fucking cool, And he's like, come on a Rod Stewart tour. So I went as 7th or 8th man on a Rod Stewart tour in South America, which was like a massive eye opener. Long way away from home.
Your first tour is Rod, or your first major tour was Rod Stewart?
Yeah, like 7th man on a PA crew. Though.
Yeah.
It was pretty
Still,
miserable.
what a way to
it's
learn,
like,
though.
Yeah. But I didn't want to wrap cable or hang PA. That's just like, what am I doing? I want to be a mixer. That's all I wanted to do was mix. And I'd bug them at front of house, and they'd be like, go and fucking coil some cable, or And finally, full circle, they asked me to mix Rod a couple of years ago, and I couldn't do it, sadly. So, which is weird, which is funny. It is a full circle thing.
It's 100% full circle.
Yeah. So that's how and then from that, I think from that point, I mean, that tour was only 2 or 3 weeks down in South America, but it was enough for me. Like, I never want to fucking coil cable or pack a truck again. I did for a few years, obviously, because that's just what I had to do, But then I hooked up with SSE in England, and they gave me a lot of work, and I did some rock bands and some pop bands, and then I can't remember. And then I think my big break was it was the Pet Shop Boys, 1989. I think it was their first tour, maybe 91.
Mm-hmm.
80.
2 years old.
How old were you? You were 2 years old. 89.
What year were you born?
6. I was in kindergarten.
86.
So I landed the Pet Shop Boys. It was their first tour, and it was Claire Brothers' tour. And I don't think I've stopped working since.
How many years have you been in the industry?
15. No, I haven't. I've
No.
been 30 something.
There's something like, it's
35.
to be in an industry for 35 years at this level, to be able to have a good reputation and to be able to consistently do this is like, that's impressive, Jim. That's really, so before we get into the next portion, like, what is your advice to the younger engineers from your level and your experience to be able to maintain not only a good sound, but a good reputation and a good brand as you continue on? What if you could kind of wrap that up a little bit into, like, what was a couple key success points, or what would you tell yourself starting off that very first, you're jumping on with the 8th person on that crew?
I think there's something about this job that's you've got to have the passion. It's very passionate, and I love mix. I could mix all day long. Unfortunately, I have to get on a plane or a bus and then set up, but I would mix all day long. The rest of it now I could do without. I don't, I've traveled, I've been lucky enough to see the world. I don't mind it, I do it, I tolerate it, and it's fine. But I love mixing. There's just something about it I love. If you ask me to zero this console out and set this desk up again, I'll be, yep, no problem, and start at channel 1. I just love it. There's just something about this business that you have to love, because I've missed my best friends' weddings, sadly missed funerals, major birthdays. And, maybe that's a little different now, but when I started out, if you said, can't be here this weekend, I've got a wedding to go to, they'd get someone else to replace you. And they wouldn't bother to fly you back. They just keep that person. So you couldn't leave a tour in those days. Now it's a little different. People have, with all the mental health issues people have, and I think productions nowadays realize that people have to have lives. You've got to have a life nowadays. But in those days, there was no life. You were married to this job, and that was it. And if you left, there might not be a job when you come back. So it was very cutthroat. 30-something years ago.
What keeps you grounded through all the touring and on the road?
Well, my personal struggle, I was very much like drinking. I took drugs in my 20s, and fortunately, it didn't kill me, and I've been sober 27 years now. So that in itself has kept me going, really, and just
14 years for me, baby.
Oh, well done! Nice.
It's encouraging to hear.
Yeah.
My gosh, wow.
So, the struggles of that, so I live my life very differently on a personal level to how I did in those days. And it absolutely shocks me, though, 28 years ago when I was a big drinker and would take other people's drugs, because that's the kind of guy I was. And, thank God I got sober when I did, and I'm amazed I didn't, I don't remember getting fired from anything because I was drunk or hungover, which I'm so fortunate and grateful for. But some personal stuff happened to me, and it was time to stop drinking. And that's just
for you,
led me on a different path.
I don't mean to go into that too deep. Was there I'm assuming there was a moment for you that you knew was the time to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Luckily, I had that moment.
Do you have any advice for people who maybe want to get sober but are kind of on the?
Talk to anybody. Call me. Put my number on here. If anyone wants to get sober,
or you can
call
hit me up too.
Hit me up, man.
Yeah.
I'll talk to anybody. If that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
And yeah.
There's some people I talk to that I do get some phone calls, and I'm very thankful that I do get phone calls about that. But it's there's some people that will talk to me like I know I need to, but I don't want to. It's like, well, then you're not.
Yeah.
Your why has to be deep enough to
Yeah.
I could keep having these phone calls with you, but it's just not going to really change anything.
Productions have become in the last few years a lot more sensible. I think people, certainly this production, are very conscious on how people are feeling, their mental health. People are a lot more aware that can happen. Drugs can take over, alcohol. It's not even that. It could be food, could be anything. Dieting. It's just it's different times.
Yeah,
different times.
What was your next tour you did after that?
Band from London called Soul to Soul.
Okay.
Those songs are still played on the radio. And then where did I go from there? I did a lot of pop bands in England for Simon Fuller, 19, like S Club 7, and I actually ended up doing the last Spice Girls tour, which was fun. But it was their reunion, I played 11 shows in England, in the UK. That was it.
Still.
And from there, I did. I worked for Maroon 5 for 9 years here. I've lived in America for 24 years now. And I started, my first job in America when I lived here was Aerosmith. I was working with Aerosmith. So I did 6 years with Aerosmith and jumped onto Maroon 5. And then moved on to Sam Smith.
Okay.
Pause. And then here.
Pause 1 second. I have a lot of people, especially from Canada, that like, hey, do more Canadian people, do more foreign people. Sorry, foreign people. Do more foreign people. But there's a lot of people that watch this, surprisingly, that are like from overseas, and they really fight with that. Like, how do I get the job in America? Do I apply for the visa and then come over here? Do I get the job and then try to do it? Like, was there a point for you that like, oh, I'm making this happen, or did the job bring you here?
The job brought me here. I mean, I was working here before I moved here. The tours I was on would come here. I did a great Tears for Fears tour, and did a big tour of America. And that band Wishbone Ash actually introduced me to America, so it was amazing. I always had I always felt comfortable here in the States for some reason, and I never thought I'd ever live in California, in Los Angeles. I always thought I'd be like a New England, Midwest, Northeast, Boston kind of area, upstate New York. But ended up in California. I met an old girlfriend of mine from growing up in England, moved to California, and I looked her up, 20 years later, went around for a cup of tea and never left. And so I'm still here, so.
Good cup of tea.
Yeah. So then we got married and then had a kid. Well, actually we had a kid, then got married and now divorced, but still best friends. And,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's, yeah. My son is here. He works for SpaceX, builds rockets for Elon. I mean, it's but in those days it was much easier to I think come here because we had I think I first came here just like on a visa like everybody else does, work permit, and then because I got married I had a green card, and then 9/11 happened, so I think America wanted to know who was in the country, so getting citizenship was pretty easy then and quick, so then I became a citizen but with dual nationality.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know how that relates to that question. People trying to get here and work here now.
Sure.
It's a whole different situation, I'm sure.
Aerosmith.
Yeah.
How'd you get that gig?
I had to sleep with the right people.
Is that why the divorce? No, I'm kidding.
Very good. Getting to know people in America, being from England, was hard. And Harry Witts was one of my regular phone calls. I can't remember how we met. I think probably the Tears for Fears thing. Harry supplied the PA, which was DB Sound in those days. And then Paul Newman, who was at Electrotech and Tasco, English companies. He's an English guy that moved to California. He was one of my phone calls, and I say one of my phone calls, touching base, just like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm available. If you hear of anything, let me know. So they, and then ML from Shoko, God rest his soul. They were my phone calls. And then I think it was Paul Newman said, there's a spot for Aerosmith. They were swapping out. Somebody got fired, and then they hired somebody, but then hired me. Just go be there in the background in case it doesn't work out. And so I came to Boston and was just there, and it did work out, fortunately. And then I went home, but it got my face around it. People knew that, that was okay. He's maybe a backup guy for that, And then eventually, I actually ended up getting that job through. They were just looking for somebody else. And I started mixing them. And I had a great time. It was one of the best times I had. I loved mixing them. They were so good.
Looking back through your career, your short 3-year career.
Hasn't finished yet, by the way.
What point do you look back on and go, wow, that was really cool?
Just the fact that I'm still here, I think. There's so many cool moments, and people ask me, where's the best country you've been to? Well, they're all great, and it just depends who you're with, the atmosphere, the vibe, what restaurant you went to that night. Oh, I had a great time, because I used to go to Japan early on. I hated it. I couldn't stand. I just could not get my head around Japan. And then there was one time visiting, in fact, with Boz Scaggs. We were doing the Blue Notes in Japan. It was a quick 3-week trip around Japan. It was one of the best tours I've ever done. And that turned me around with Japan. I'm like, I love Japan. And so it's just the situation and the headspace, really. And of course, doing this job, it's been amazing. The people I've met along the way, the people I've worked with, the crews that have taken care of me, which I couldn't do this without them because I have no idea how the back of this console works and where it goes or anything like that. But it's just been I think every day is, it's a new day. Just embrace every day as it is, and it's 35 years later, might even be
So
40 years.
on the flip side of that, what do you feel like was your biggest failure you've done, and what did you learn from that failure?
I think I may have been at some point a little stuck in my ways and thought, I know how to do this better than anybody else. And at that point, I became unteachable. And I think in this business, you need to remain teachable, because I learn things every day from people because I'm open to being teachable, even after all these years. I went and saw Snow Patrol a month ago, and my friend Mark is mixing that. And do you know Mark?
I have not.
Caroline?
No, I'd love
he
to.
mixes Muse as well. He has changed
Mark,
my
if you're
life.
watching this, I would love to interview you, please.
Mark this is the man here. Mark has changed my view on mixing twice in my career. The first time, probably 10, 12 years ago, I saw Muse at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. And I sat in the guest seats at the side there. And after song 3, I had to leave and cry because it was so fucking good. I'm like, I've got to mix like that. That's how I need things to sound now. And it was a total reinvigoration of live sound. Because you get there and you're mixing the same band every fucking, it can get a little monotonous. So at that point, I learned things shouldn't get monotonous. Don't make things get monotonous. Things need changing. Things need a little manipulating. And then I saw him mix Snow Patrol in a small place in Chicago a month ago. And incidentally, Mark, you never sat down once. He'll know what that means. He was doing some stuff, which I'm not going to divulge because it's an interesting thing, which why don't I do that? I need to do that. And I started doing it a few days ago. And I'm like, this is amazing.
Is it standing?
Why? No, it's not standing. It's not standing. No, he said to me, I showed up and he goes, look, I've got a chair. I'm going to start mixing now because I think it's better. Getting older and I'm going to start sitting down. He didn't sit down once. But I always sit down for mixing, but it's a whole nother thing. But so, I just remain teachable, and it's interesting to learn from other people who are doing this. There shouldn't, I'm not going to tell you that because it's a secret. But I'll tell anybody what they want to hear because, you can look at my plugins. I don't care. You look at my EQ. It's like if you're learning from it, that's great. You're learning from it, and this is what we're all here for, And it's again, you can look at my EQ, and if I remember years ago, people would look, oh, that's his vocal EQ. I'm going to try that. Well, it's a completely different vocal. It's a completely different human being singing. Why is that going to work for that person? And so remain open and creative.
What's the last song you mixed that made you feel emotional in a good way?
A couple of these tunes every night make me feel great because it's just when it gels, it gels. When it works, it works.
Okay.
For me, because I'm so picky and critical, might be working for everybody else in here, every single song, but for me, it's like, oh, there you go. There's a moment there that's just like gorgeous, and it just sounds perfect.
Transition to this band. Were you a fan of the band before you?
Interestingly, I didn't really know too much about Linkin Park. I did know "Burn It Down," the song, which piqued my interest when it was just on radio play, I don't know, 10 or so years ago. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. And I think I downloaded some songs from that album and listened to them. But they were never really in my radar. I knew of them. And, so I think getting this job, coming in with a palette that's just
No preconceived,
preconceived ideas. It's like, okay, here's a rock band. And, I think I'm doing okay.
So did you show up day one with a wide open, or did you spend some time beforehand listening to them, diving deep into it?
They gave me a Spotify playlist of all the potential songs that were going to get played, and this is going back.
Well, it's so unique too because it's a different lead singer as well.
Absolutely,
so it's like, how do you
exactly?
Kind of have to
so
go
I was
to
really interested after I listened to those songs for like a month, and then we finally get into rehearsals, and she opens her mouth. I'm like, this is going to be fucking great. This is going to be really fucking great. And I think Ricky and I were sitting there. And he's like, oh, okay, this is, this is going to be good.
Biggest
And it
miss.
just keeps getting better and better as well.
I'm excited to see
You're
this.
excited, I can tell.
I am very excited. Honestly, like we talked about this earlier, but Linkin Park was such a pivotal part of my growing up and my life, especially when it came out. It was just, I remember even having Linkin Park shirts and roar at the album and watch the DVD for it. And I just have, it's a, honestly, kind of almost a full circle. This is even before I got in the music industry. So it's really cool to be sitting here. But with this, what do you think is the biggest misconception people have about this show?
About this?
About the show?
The show?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think when we started this cycle, it was, how's Emily going to go down? Is she replacing Chester, or is she just going to do her own thing? The new album was released at the same time.
Mhm.
So there's this whole new product with Emily as the lead singer, which went to #1 all around the world. I mean, it was phenomenal. And Emily does a great job, I think, of taking care of the old Linkin Park songs. And it seems that the fans have embraced that and, accepted her as just, I don't know, she's not trying to replace Chester by any means. But it seems to work. This new format of the band is a new format of the band. It's not trying to be old Linkin Park, I think, but you'd have to ask them. That's my take on it.
What is the best piece of advice you've gotten from one of your mentors?
Gary Bradshaw was a English sound mixer. He's just retiring this year. He's mixing ELO at the moment, and it's going to be his last gig at Hyde Park in London with ELO. I saw him mixing years and years ago, and he mixed Roger Waters when Pink Floyd first separated, and it was Roger's first tour. And I was waiting for Electrotech, and I had to take something down to Wembley. And I sat there, and I'm like, this just sounds amazing. Big PA system in Wembley Arena. And I've watched him over the years, and he and I sort of toured together. I'd be doing the opening act, he'd be doing the main act. And I don't know what he did. He actually doesn't do anything. He's just, it's just magic. And he doesn't really use plugins. He doesn't really use anything there. He just balances music beautifully at the right volume. I think volume is everything. Too loud and you fucked it. Too quiet and it's not exciting. It's got to be the right level. And I can't sit in a room that's too loud or too harsh, because it's just not exciting for me. I like low end. I like fat. I like everything to gel together and it just to be the right volume. And good mixers, like Mark, always mix at the right volume. And so that to me is like the essence of mixing live sound. All this is all crap, these fucking plugins and shit. It's just getting the right balance of stuff.
What band would you pay to mix for?
Sadly, they both passed away. I always wanted to mix David Bowie and Prince. I did one show with Prince. I would love to have done a tour with Prince.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How are we doing? 11 minutes. Got 11 minutes on that card, so I gotta make sure I don't. And that's the main one too.
Okay.
Um,
I'm done. I got nothing else.
If people want to follow you and follow your career, where can they follow you at?
Ebdon Music.
Okay.
Instagram.
Perfect. Or come
at Ebdon Music. EBDON.
Okay. Or come to a Linkin Park show near you.